Hello and welcome to Sleepsmyth, your peaceful place to unwind, dream, and drift gently into sleep. Before we start our story tonight, let me help you settle in with a simple, calming breath like a gentle lullaby for your body and mind. So, find a cozy spot, maybe snuggle under your blanket, and softly close your eyes. Now, breathing quietly through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath softly for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now, slowly exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds, letting all the tension melt away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do that again. Nice and easy. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One last time, just like a soft whisper. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel your body getting lighter, your mind quiet, as if you're being tucked gently into a calm, warm bed. Thank you for sharing this moment with Sleepsmyth. Now, relax completely and let the story carry you into a peaceful, restful sleep. Let's begin.
It begins in a silence older than memory, a hush that settles over the world as night leans close. In this quiet, there is a place where time seems to fold, where pages and ink carry more than words. They carry secrets, whispers, dreams. There exists a collection unlike any other, bound not in wood, but in parchment and leather, etched with letters that resist comprehension, sealed with ink that holds centuries of mystery. These are books that have traveled across time, across minds, across the delicate spaces between the known and the unknowable. Tonight, the covers part with a whisper, and the manuscripts breathe into the world once more. A library of rare and singular texts, each one a universe, each page a doorway. Within them dwell knowledge, enigma, and dreams. Knowledge that teeters on the edge of understanding. Dreams that shimmer like faint candlelight in a shadowed hall. Our first journey leads to the Voynich Manuscript, a book of impossible plants, cryptic constellations, and a script that no one has ever read. Its pages bloom like gardens of enigma, promising secrets that may never be unraveled, yet beckoning the mind to wander. Next, we follow the winding path of the Ripley Scrolls, surreal alchemical visions painted with dragons, suns, and moons. These scrolls are a map of transformation, where fire meets water, where riddles in verse guide the seeker through a dreamscape of symbols, urging patience, reflection, and quiet wonder. And finally, we encounter the Book of Soyga, a celestial cipher of letters, grids, and angelic whispers. A Renaissance manuscript, half visible and half hidden, its secrets carried on the subtle breath of divine logic, decipherable only by the patient and the devout, revealing glimpses of knowledge that seems to belong not to this world. Each of these manuscripts is unique, a singular relic in the vast tapestry of history. They resist easy understanding, yet call to those willing to linger, to explore the margins, to follow the rhythm of symbols and whispers. Tonight, we open these rare and mysterious books and drift together through their pages, where every letter, every illustration, every secreted verse hums with quiet magic. And in this hush, we are invited to wander, to wonder, to dream. The Voynich Manuscript, The Endless Garden of Secrets. A book of impossible plants, unbroken codes, and constellations that belong to no sky, carrying a story that refuses to be known. A book without a past. In the year 1912, a rare book dealer named Wilfred Voynich wandered through the library of a Jesuit villa near Rome. He was used to forgotten manuscripts, but this time his eyes fell upon a volume that felt different the moment he lifted it. Bound in pale vellum, its cover carried no title, no author's name, not even a date. Only silence and weight, as though the book itself wanted to remain hidden. When Voynich opened the first pages, he found drawings unlike any he had ever seen. Plants filled the parchment, painted with careful strokes of green and red. Some looked almost familiar, like herbs that might have grown in European gardens, yet each one slipped into strangeness. Leaves bent into unusual patterns, roots spiraled into designs no soil would produce, blossoms opened into shapes that felt imagined rather than observed. It was a garden that seemed alive, but not of this world. Beside the pictures, lines of text stretched across the vellum. The script looked like language, but belonged to none known on earth. Curving letters repeated with the rhythm of words, flowing smoothly across page after page. Whoever had written them did so with confidence, as if they were recording something precise, something important. Yet no one, not Voynich, not the scholars he later showed it to, could read even a single word. The manuscript gave no explanation. No introduction, no signature, no date to guide its story. Centuries later, scientific testing of the parchment suggested it was created in the early 15th century. But when Voynich first turned its pages, it felt timeless, a relic that had slipped free from history, arriving in his hands without a past. Voynich carried the book back with him, unsettled and intrigued. He would share it with experts, with historians, with cryptographers. All would try to understand it. Some wondered if it was a hoax, an elaborate trick meant to puzzle and impress. Others believed it might hold secret knowledge, medicinal formulas, alchemical wisdom, or discoveries long forgotten. But nothing resolved the mystery. The book remained closed even as it lay open before them. A codex that refused to be understood, keeping its silence intact. And so it became known by the name of the man who discovered it. The Voynich Manuscript, a book without a past, and perhaps without an ending. Gardens that never grew. As Voynich turned deeper into the manuscript, he stepped into a world of plants unlike any he had seen before. They spread across the pages in patient detail, painted with a steady hand, their colors softened by centuries yet still carrying a quiet vibrancy. Stems rose tall and slender, leaves bent into shapes both familiar and strange, blossoms unfurled in patterns that defied recognition. It was as if a gardener had imagined an entirely new kingdom of plants and preserved them here on vellum so they would never fade. Some of the drawings hinted at resemblance. A flower curved like a lily, though its petals bent the wrong way. A root seemed to mimic ginseng, but it twisted into impossible spirals. A cluster of leaves looked close to sage, yet branched into forms that belonged to no garden or forest of earth. The plants felt almost knowable, like words at the tip of the tongue, yet each dissolved into mystery the moment you tried to name it. Scholars across generations have tried to match these illustrations to real plants. Some claimed they belonged to Europe, others saw the fingerprints of Asia or even the Americas. But the Voynich Manuscript was created in the 15th century, long before many of those regions could have been reached by the book's possible creators. Still, none of the identifications ever held. Each suggestion collapsed under closer study, as though the plants themselves resisted being claimed by the world we know. To look at the pages is to feel as though you've stepped into a garden that belongs not to nature, but to memory or dream. The lines of ink trace veins in leaves that no sunlight has touched, roots that have never felt the soil, flowers that seem to bloom only within the closed world of the manuscript. It is a botany without earth, a collection without specimen jars or pressed leaves, a garden kept alive only in paint and vellum. Some have wondered if the plants are symbolic, that they represent ideas or alchemical principles rather than living herbs. Others imagine they might be hybrids, stitched together from parts of several species, drawn to record experiments in healing or in magic. Still others have whispered that perhaps they are real, but from a place unknown to us, a corner of the world uncharted, or perhaps a world beyond this one. Whatever the truth, the effect is the same. The viewer is drawn into a strange calm, as if wandering down paths lined with foliage that is almost recognizable, but always slipping away from certainty. It is not a threatening strangeness, but a quiet one, the kind of mystery that asks you to look again, to lean closer, to imagine the roots reaching beneath your feet even though you know they cannot. The plants of the Voynich Manuscript do not wither, do not grow, do not seed the ground. They remain as they are, forever suspended in ink and color. A garden that never lived, yet never dies, waiting for the eye of the reader to give them life, one turning page at a time. Words without tongue. If the plants were a puzzle of shape and color, the words beside them were a deeper riddle still. They covered the pages in neat, flowing lines, written with a hand that never faltered. Each symbol curved with grace, repeating in patterns that felt as natural as speech. Yet no one who has held the book in 6 centuries has been able to read a single word. The script seems purposeful, almost alive. It is not clumsy invention, not the scribbles of chance. It moves with rhythm, the way true language does. Some symbols return again and again, forming what look like endings. Others cluster near the beginning of lines, as though they might be prefixes or roots. To the eye, it has the weight of meaning, but to the mind, it gives nothing. Scholars later gave this writing a name, Voynich, a language that appears to exist only here, on these pages. Linguists, mathematicians, and codebreakers alike have tried to pierce its veil. They measured the frequency of letters, traced repetitions, compared the length of words. Some patterns matched the behavior of natural languages, the rise and fall of words, the balance of repetition and variation. Yet when they tried to assign meaning, the lock refused to open. The mystery deepened as centuries passed. Some believed it might be a cipher, hiding its words beneath a system of substitution. Others thought it was a hoax, an elaborate creation meant to mimic language while carrying no sense at all. But if it were nonsense, why would the writing flow with such discipline, page after page, without hesitation or correction? No hoaxer would labor so patiently, inventing hundreds of glyphs with the care of a true scribe. Imagine sitting in candlelight with the manuscript before you, tracing the lines with your eyes. The letters seem to lean towards speech, as if waiting for you to pronounce them. You almost hear their rhythm, as though a voice is whispering just out of reach. And yet when you try to give them sound, the attempt collapses. No syllable matches, no tongue can shape them. They are words without voice, waiting in silence. Through the centuries, cryptographers have tried and failed. During the Second World War, codebreakers who unraveled enemy ciphers studied the manuscript, confident they would succeed. They did not. In more recent years, computers and artificial intelligence have been turned upon its pages, measuring every mark, every curve. Still, the code holds. Still, the silence remains. It is a language that seems to sit at the edge of knowing, close enough to be felt, never close enough to be grasped. A reminder that not every script, not every voice, is meant to be understood. And so the Voynich Manuscript waits, filled with words that speak only to themselves, a language of shadows and shapes, carrying a meaning no one has ever heard. Maps of other skies. Beyond the gardens and the flowing script, the manuscript opens to pages filled with circles and stars. Wheels drawn with careful geometry, rings within rings, each one marked with tiny figures and symbols. At first glance they seem like charts, the kind an astronomer might make to follow the movement of the heavens. Yet these skies are unfamiliar. Their constellations do not belong to our world. Some of the diagrams show the zodiac, but not as we know it. Signs like Pisces, Aries, and Taurus appear, though drawn in unusual forms, their names written in the strange script. Around them spin patterns of stars that do not match the night sky we have mapped for centuries. They are constellations belonging to no telescope, no sailor's chart, no astronomer's table. They feel like echoes from another cosmos, as though the book remembers a sky we have never seen. In other pages, great wheels turn upon themselves. Circles layered upon circles, filled with small stars and flowing lines, as if charting forces invisible to us. Some scholars have called them cosmological diagrams, visions of how the universe might be ordered. They may have been attempts to place Earth, water, air, and fire within a grand design. Or perhaps they are maps of time itself, cycles repeating through the ages, spirals turning without end. Tiny human-like figures appear within these wheels, as though drifting among the stars or guiding the circles forward. Their presence makes the diagrams feel less like cold astronomy and more like visions, like dreams of how the heavens might embrace life. To look at them is to feel as though you are gazing into a sky painted by imagination, half scientific, half mystical. Some researchers believe these diagrams were meant for astrology rather than astronomy, that they describe not only the stars above, but the influence those stars might cast upon health, upon fate, upon the secret order of the body. In the 15th century, medicine and astrology were closely tied. Perhaps these charts were guides to when to plant, when to heal, when to act, when to wait. Perhaps they were calendars for a world guided by the movement of heavens we no longer recognize. And yet none of this can be proven. Like the plants, the stars of the Voynich Manuscript resist being pinned to anything certain. They are wheels that turn without answer, constellations that fade the moment you try to fix them in place. Imagine holding the manuscript open on one of these pages, the candlelight flickering across circles that seem almost to move. You might feel for a moment as though you are looking at a true map, not of the sky above your head, but of a sky that exists elsewhere, just beyond reach. It is a reminder that the stars have always been both chart and mystery, guiding sailors, guiding dreamers, guiding stories. And here, in this book, they guide no one. They turn only for themselves, maps of other skies that wait in silence, untouched by time, still glowing faintly from a world unknown. Waters of transformation. Turn the pages again, and the manuscript shifts once more. This time it opens into scenes of flowing water, drawn in blue-green ink that meanders like streams across the vellum. Small human figures appear here, mostly women, their bodies simplified but distinct, stepping into pools, standing in tubs, slipping along pipes that weave in impossible ways. Some carry vessels, others raise their hands as if caught in ritual. Around them, the water curls and flows, joining one basin to another, passing through channels like veins of an unseen body. It is a strange world, part bathhouse, part alchemical theater. Scholars have puzzled over these pages more than almost any other in the manuscript. Some believe they represent a kind of medical knowledge, perhaps connected to bathing practices or herbal remedies. In the 15th century, water was considered a source of healing, purification, and balance. To immerse oneself was to cleanse not only the body, but the spirit. Perhaps these images recorded recipes of health, guiding when and how the body should meet the waters. Others have imagined something more symbolic. The figures seem too dreamlike, their poses too ritualistic, to belong only to medicine. The pipes curl like alchemical vessels, as though the entire page were an elaborate laboratory. One chamber leads into another, liquid spilling from one shape to the next. It feels as if the book is describing transformation itself, the way matter changes, the way one state flows into another. The women may be more than figures. Perhaps they embody principles, like purity, rebirth, or even the hidden forces of nature. Still others whisper that the images may be cosmological, echoing the heavenly diagrams nearby, that the channels of water mirror the channels of stars, the flow of rivers above and below. In this reading, the women are not human at all, but personifications of constellations, dancing within the eternal tides of the universe. Whatever the truth, the effect of these pages is unmistakable. To linger over them is to feel pulled into a quiet rhythm, as if the sound of flowing water were hidden within the parchment itself. Pools seem to glimmer as though lit from within, pipes twist with secret intention, and the figures, though frozen in ink, seem almost to sway in the current. Close your eyes, and you might imagine the sound of trickling streams, the echo of basins filling and spilling, the soft movements of unseen hands guiding the flow. The manuscript becomes not a book at all, but a fountain, one whose waters do not quench thirst, but instead awaken wonder. No explanation has held, no theory has quieted the questions. Yet perhaps that is the point. These pages invite us not to solve, but to drift, to follow the water where it leads, to imagine what transformations might lie just beyond the page. The Voynich Manuscript holds many mysteries, but here within these pools and channels, it whispers of change itself. The eternal movement from one state to another, from stillness to flow, from silence to voice, from the known to the unknown. Decipherers in the dark. For centuries, the manuscript passed quietly from one hand to another, its mystery deepening with every attempt to understand it. Scholars studied it by candlelight, tracing the strange words with their fingers, sketching copies of the plants in hopes of finding matches in known herbals. Each reader believed they might be the one to unlock its secret, yet each left with more questions than they had begun. In the 17th century, the book found its way into the library of the Roman Collegio Romano, where learned men puzzled over its pages. Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit scholar fascinated by ancient languages and alchemy, received letters about the manuscript. He was told it was a work no one could read, and he tried, unsuccessfully, to solve its code. Even then, in a world still half-rooted in mystery and faith, the manuscript resisted. When Wilfred Voynich revealed it anew in 1912, the circle of decipherers grew larger. Historians, linguists, and cryptographers all tried their hand. Some were convinced it was written in a cipher that hid Latin or Italian or even Hebrew. Others thought it might be glossolalia, words written in the flow of inspiration without any underlying language. No theory held for long. During the Second World War, the manuscript passed into the hands of military codebreakers. These were men who unraveled enemy communications, who bent their minds against the hardest puzzles of their time. They studied the strange script with the same tools they had used to break wartime ciphers. If anyone could pierce the code, surely it was them. But after months of work, even they set it aside. The manuscript kept its silence. In later years, mathematicians and linguists applied new methods, counting frequencies, measuring word lengths, comparing structures to hundreds of known languages. Computers joined the effort, searching for hidden orders, mapping patterns invisible to the human eye. And though the results showed the script behaved like a true language, no one could translate even a single line. Each attempt, however, added to the story. Each failure drew more curiosity, as if the book itself thrived on resistance. It became less a manuscript to be solved, and more a mirror, reflecting the persistence and wonder of those who tried. To read it was to enter a long tradition of seekers, men and women leaning over its pages in silence, convinced they were on the edge of revelation. And still the pages remain mute. The words wait, the diagrams remain still, and the centuries stretch on without answer. The decipherers have left their notes, their theories, their fragments of hope, but the manuscript itself remains unchanged, as if untouched by time. Perhaps it was never meant to be solved. Perhaps its purpose lies in the search itself, the way it draws minds together across centuries, each one adding another layer of wonder to the mystery. For in the end, the Voynich Manuscript speaks not through its translation, but through its silence, and the generations who keep trying to break it. Whispers of origin. If no one could read the manuscript, perhaps, scholars thought, its story could be guessed through its origins. And so, over the centuries, countless theories rose and fell, each whispering a different birth for the silent book. Some believed it was the work of a medieval alchemist, a secret record of experiments, hidden in cipher to guard the knowledge from unworthy eyes. The drawings of plants, the wheels of stars, the flowing waters, all could be symbols of processes too dangerous to reveal openly. In this telling, the manuscript becomes a key to transformation, a map for those seeking gold, immortality, or the philosopher's stone. Others pointed to the 13th century monk and scholar Roger Bacon. Known for his wide-ranging studies, Bacon wrote of alchemy, optics, and medicine in ways far ahead of his time. Some claimed the manuscript's mixture of plants, stars, and chemistry could have sprung from his restless mind. Yet when the vellum was later dated to the early 15th century, the link to Bacon faded, though the rumor still lingers in shadowed corners of the tale. Still others whispered that the book came from far beyond Europe, that the plants might be species from the Americas, drawn before explorers had even crossed the Atlantic. If true, the manuscript would be a relic of knowledge carried across oceans in secret, or perhaps a record of a lost traveler's eye. But no journey has ever been proven, no voyage tied to its pages. There are stories, too, of it being created as an elaborate hoax. A clever scribe, some argue, may have crafted it to confound wealthy collectors, to sell mystery for gold. The strange script, the careful drawings, the sheer volume of pages, all could have been the work of a patient trickster. Yet doubt lingers here as well. For why would a hoaxer labor with such devotion, filling page after page with patterns so consistent, so precise, so endlessly strange? No one has ever proven the purpose, or even the profit, behind such a scheme. In more mystical whispers, the manuscript is said to be a gift from elsewhere entirely. A book carried by angels, or a relic of a forgotten civilization, or even a message left for humanity by minds not of this world. Such stories reach beyond history, into the territory of legend. Yet they persist, perhaps because no earthly explanation has ever been enough. What is certain is only this: the parchment was made in the early 15th century, the ink likely from the same time. Beyond that, the trail fades into silence. No author's hand can be named, no origin fixed. The book exists as though it had written itself, slipping into the world without parentage or place. And so it has become a mirror of speculation, reflecting the hopes and fears of every age that studies it. Alchemists see their hidden laboratories, scientists see unknown flora, mystics see visions of heaven, tricksters see a puzzle too perfect to ignore. Yet the manuscript itself remains quiet. It does not answer, it does not confirm. It only waits, as it always has, for new readers to imagine its birth anew. Silence that endures. The centuries have turned, kingdoms have risen and fallen, new sciences have bloomed, yet the Voynich Manuscript remains what it has always been. A book that resists understanding. Its vellum has aged, its colors have softened, its edges have worn with handling, but its voice has never grown louder. It continues to sit in silence, inviting but refusing to explain. Today the manuscript rests in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale. Kept in careful conditions, its fragile pages turned only by gloved hands, its mystery preserved for those who still wish to look upon it. And people do come, year after year, drawn not by answers but by the wonder of its questions. They gaze at the strange plants, the flowing script, the impossible skies, and feel the same stirrings of curiosity that Wilfred Voynich once felt in 1912, lifting the book from its hiding place. Modern tools have not broken it. Radiocarbon dating has told us the parchment is from the early 15th century. Ink analysis has tied it to that same period. But no chemical, no scan, no algorithm has revealed the mind that wrote it, nor the meaning it sought to capture. Even the most powerful computers, trained to crack languages and patterns, find themselves drifting into silence when faced with its pages. Perhaps that is its secret gift. For in a world where so much can be measured, solved, and catalogued, here is one relic that refuses. It sits outside the reach of certainty, a reminder that mystery still exists, that there are corners of knowledge left untouched. For some, this silence is frustrating. For others, it is comforting. To hold the Voynich Manuscript in mind is to be reminded of the limits of reason and of the vast space beyond them. It whispers that not everything is meant to be explained, not every voice translated. Some things endure by being unknowable. Imagine then, a reader centuries from now, turning the same pages, tracing the same indecipherable words. The world around them will have changed beyond recognition, yet the manuscript will be the same. Its plants still blooming, its stars still turning, its waters still flowing across vellum. An endless book, alive only in the act of being seen. And perhaps that is its truest meaning. Not the words that no one can read, not the diagrams no one can chart, but the silence it keeps. A silence that stretches across time, binding together all who have ever opened it. Each reader becomes part of its story, linked not by understanding, but by wonder. The Voynich Manuscript endures, not as a solved riddle, but as an eternal question. A reminder that even in a world mapped and measured, there will always remain pages that turn into mystery, pages that never truly end. The Ripley Scrolls. The Alchemist's Dream Unrolled. Rivers of alchemy, alive with dragons, vessels, and celestial signs, carrying seekers through strange verses toward the promise of transformation. A scroll without end. Unlike most manuscripts, which sit closed within a cover, the Ripley Scrolls do not stop at the edge of a page. They stretch onward, unrolling across many feet of parchment, so long that a single reader cannot take them in all at once. They must be unfurled slowly, with care, as though revealing a hidden path step by step. To face one is to feel less as if you are reading a book, and more as if you are walking a road painted in ink and symbol. The scrolls are named after George Ripley, a 15th century English alchemist whose writings on transformation were known across Europe. He himself may not have drawn these works, yet his ideas gave them their breath, his words woven into their long bodies of text. More than 20 of these scrolls survive, each slightly different, but all carrying the same strange rhythm of image and verse. As the scrolls unroll, they tell a story of change, though not in plain speech. Instead, they wind through riddles and allegories, carrying the viewer into a world where dragons coil around vessels, sages stand beside furnaces, suns and moons shine above crucibles, and angels look on from painted skies. Every figure seems to guide the seeker towards something, yet never says outright what it is. The meaning is always hidden just behind the picture, waiting for the eye to chase it. At first glance, the scrolls seem overwhelming, a torrent of symbols flowing endlessly forward. But to those who linger, a rhythm begins to appear. One scene flows into the next, each image another step in a great journey. The seeker at the bottom of the scroll begins in ignorance, surrounded by symbols of raw, chaotic matter. As the scroll rises, so too does the knowledge. Vessels refine, fires burn hotter, elements mingle and separate. The path winds upward toward a promise that is always just beyond reach. The Philosopher's Stone, the secret of transmuting base matter into gold, and perhaps the transformation of the spirit itself. Picture standing before one of these scrolls in a quiet hall. It stretches across a table like a river of vellum, colors still bright despite the centuries. You begin to unroll it slowly, your hand guiding the parchment forward, revealing new chambers, new figures, new verses. The scroll does not end quickly. It leads you on, deeper and deeper, until you feel as though you are walking inside its painted world. Unlike a codex, which allows you to close it and step away, the Ripley Scroll demands a kind of surrender. Once unrolled, it takes the room with it, filling the space, filling the air with its images. It is a text you do not simply read, but inhabit. The scrolls survive in scattered places, libraries, collections, archives, each one a thread of the same dream. They are not identical copies, but variations of a theme, as though each scribe had glimpsed the same vision and tried to capture it in their own hand. And so the dream continues, rolling outward, unending, even now. A scroll without end, a story without conclusion. A river of images carrying the seeker onward, always onward, toward a promise written not in words alone, but in the endless unfurling of the dream. Dragons of ink and fire. As the scrolls unroll, one figure rises again and again from the painted river of symbols, the dragon. Coiled and fierce, it spreads its wings across the vellum, its jaws open as if breathing flame. Sometimes its body is green, sometimes black, sometimes a strange mix of hues. In every form, it seems to guard the path, a creature both dangerous and necessary, waiting for the seeker to pass. To the alchemists, the dragon was no ordinary beast. It was matter itself, raw and untamed. Its fire was the burning force of transformation, and its hunger was the endless cycle of creation and destruction. Some scrolls show the dragon devouring its own tail, the ancient symbol of the Ouroboros, a reminder that every ending folds into a new beginning. To look upon it is to be reminded that change comes through fire, through struggle, through the consuming of one state before another can emerge. In one scene, the dragon coils around a vessel, its body twisted like smoke, its head bent toward the furnace flame. In another, it seems to rise from a pool of ink-dark waters, as though it were born from the depths of matter itself. Always it appears at moments of trial, where the scroll's path moves from chaos to clarity. It is both guardian and guide, forcing the seeker to confront the rawness of nature before they can hope to refine it. To those who read these images centuries later, the dragon might appear only as myth, as decoration. But for the alchemists, it was a symbol alive with meaning. To face the dragon was to face the beginning of the work, the prima materia, the base matter from which everything must be transformed. Without it, no gold could ever be born, no spirit could ever rise. The scrolls do not show the dragon defeated outright. Instead, they show it tamed, its fire turned toward the work. The seeker does not slay the beast, but learns to guide it, to use its flame as the furnace that purifies, the fire that reveals hidden essences. In this way, the dragon becomes less a threat and more a companion, one that carries the seeker deeper into the path of alchemy. Imagine standing before the scroll in a quiet library, candlelight flickering across the painted scales. You trace the lines of the dragon's body, following it as it winds across the parchment. Its wings seem ready to lift, its eyes ready to open. For a moment, it feels as though the beast is not merely painted, but waiting, watching. As though it could rise from the vellum and breathe its fire into the stillness of the room. The alchemists believed that within every material, no matter how base, there was a hidden spark waiting to be released. The dragon is that spark embodied, fierce, consuming, and eternal. And so, in the Ripley Scrolls, it lives on, not as a monster to fear, but as the fire that keeps the journey alive. Dragons of ink and fire, written into parchment, painted into eternity, forever coiling, forever guarding the path to transformation. Vessels of glass and flame. As the scroll winds onward, the eye falls upon shapes less wild than dragons, yet no less mysterious. Vessels of glass, round and delicate, rise like bubbles upon the parchment. Tall flasks, narrow-necked, stand beside furnaces painted in glowing red and gold. These are the alchemist's instruments, drawn not as diagrams for use, but as symbols of the hidden process, the dance of matter within fire. In one panel, a vessel sits upon a bed of flames, its rounded belly filled with liquid that shifts from pale blue to deep crimson. In another, the vessel is capped, sealed tight, as though it holds a secret too fragile to be let loose into the air. Each vessel seems alive, as if it were a world of its own, containing within it the trials and transformations of the great work. The alchemists believed that the vessel was more than a tool. It was the womb of rebirth, the chamber where matter died and was born again. Inside the sealed glass, metals melted, vapors rose, colors shifted through strange and beautiful stages, blackening, whitening, yellowing, reddening, each phase carrying the material closer to its perfected form. And so the vessel, simple in appearance, became a symbol of the world itself. Fragile, round, transparent, yet filled with fire and mystery. The scrolls show these vessels with care, often surrounded by verses that speak in riddles of what lies within. Some say the vessel must never be opened too soon, lest the spirit escape before it is ready. Others describe the vessel as a mirror, where not only matter, but the alchemist's own soul is tested and transformed. To work with it was to work with patience, with secrecy, with devotion. In the glow of candlelight, imagine standing before such a vessel, the glass trembling faintly from the heat beneath, a thin thread of vapor rising toward the ceiling. The room is hushed, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs, heated metals, hidden reactions. You lean closer, and the surface of the liquid within seems to shimmer, as though it were not merely substance, but a dream shifting from one shape to another. To the viewer of the scroll, centuries later, the vessel appears again and again, a constant presence along the winding path. Always the reminder that change happens within, in hidden chambers, in spaces where the eye cannot fully see. The dragon may coil outside, the symbols may point the way, but it is within the vessel that the true work unfolds. It is here that fire meets matter, and matter meets spirit. Here that the alchemist's dream, fragile and uncertain, is given form. The vessel of glass and flame, drawn upon vellum, glowing across centuries, still whispers of a secret world sealed within. Ladder of transformation. As the scrolls unroll further, one begins to notice a shape repeated through their winding imagery. A ladder, stretching upward rung by rung, painted not always as wood, but as a path of ascent. Figures climb upon it, robed seekers, crowned kings, winged spirits, each step carrying them closer to some shining height above. It is the ladder of transformation, the quiet heart of the scroll's promise. The alchemists saw the work not only as a labor of metals, but as a labor of the soul. And so the ladder stands, rung after rung, as the passage through stages of refinement. At the bottom, the figures are ordinary, weighed down by the heaviness of base matter. As they rise, they grow lighter, brighter, more radiant. At the highest rungs, their faces shine, their robes gleam, their forms are crowned with light. The climb is not only of body, but of spirit, a journey from darkness to illumination. In one scroll, the ladder rises directly from a furnace, its base planted in fire. Each rung above seems to glow with the colors of change: black, white, yellow, red. These were the stages of the alchemical process, the phases through which matter must pass. But they were also the stages of the seeker's own transformation, the inner trials mirrored in outer fire. To climb was not simply to rise, but to endure the burning, the purifying, the endless testing of the soul. Imagine gazing upon the painted ladder by lamplight, your eyes following its rungs upward into the parchment sky. The figures who climb it seem to move, their hands reaching, their faces lifted. You feel as though you too are being drawn upward, pulled into the scroll's quiet ascent. It is not a hurried climb, but a slow, patient one, each rung another night's vigil, another whispered prayer, another secret trial endured. To those who read the verses alongside the ladder, the words speak in riddles of ascent, of crowns and coronations, of rewards that cannot be held in hand but only in spirit. Gold may be the promise, but the true treasure is elsewhere, higher, more difficult to name. It is the transformation of the seeker, the shift from what is heavy and bound to what is light and free. The Ripley Scrolls never state the lesson outright. They show it instead through image, through symbol. A ladder unrolling across vellum, a path of upward steps painted in ink and color. Its rungs remain for all who gaze upon it, silent, patient, waiting. Perhaps that is why the scrolls endure, for they do not only speak of furnaces and metals, but of something deeper, of the soul's hunger to rise, rung by rung, toward light. The ladder of transformation, painted centuries ago, still invites the eye to climb. Suns and moons above the work, high above the vessels and fires, above the dragons and ladders, two great lights shine again and again upon the scrolls. The sun, golden and radiant, pouring down its brilliance. The moon, pale and cool, casting its soft aglow. They appear as painted faces, often crowned, sometimes smiling, sometimes solemn, always watching, always present, as though guarding the entire alchemical journey from their places in the sky. For the alchemist, these were not only the lights of day and night, but living symbols. The sun stood for gold, for sulfur, for the fiery masculine force of creation. The moon stood for silver, for Mercury, for the receptive feminine spirit of change. Together they represented the union of opposites, the marriage of elements that must occur before any true transformation can begin. Without their harmony, no work could reach completion. The Ripley Scrolls show them in many forms. Sometimes the sun pours its rays directly into a vessel, heating it with golden fire. Sometimes the moon bends low, her silver beams falling upon a flask as though cooling and soothing it. At other times, the two lights face each other, as though in dialogue, their rays mingling in the air between them. To see them upon the scroll is to remember that all change depends upon balance, upon the meeting of what burns and what cools, what shines and what reflects. Imagine gazing upon the scroll in a quiet hall. The candlelight flickers, and the golden sun seems almost to glow more brightly, while the silver moon shimmers faintly in the shadows. For a moment, you feel as though the parchment sky has opened, and you are standing beneath their eternal gaze. The room itself seems filled with their light, golden warmth upon one side, silvery calm upon the other. The verses that accompany these images speak in riddles of union. They speak of the king and queen, of marriage and embrace, of two becoming one. Not in earthly terms, but in a higher mystery, the blending of forces that were once divided. The seeker is reminded that perfection does not come through fire alone, nor through coolness alone, but through their mingling, just as the sun and moon share the same heavens. In this way, the scrolls carry a quiet lesson that even the most hidden work of transformation is part of a greater rhythm, one mirrored in the rising and setting of celestial lights. As above, so below. The heavens guide the vessels reflect the heavens. The sun and moon remain above it all, their steady presence a promise that change, though difficult, is natural, eternal, and written into the fabric of both sky and earth. And so, centuries later, the painted faces still shine from the Ripley Scrolls, silent, patient, unchanged. The golden sun, the silver moon, guardians of the work, companions of the seeker, lights that never fade. Alchemical riddles in verse. Between the painted figures and curling symbols, lines of text appear upon the Ripley Scrolls. Verses written in English of the 15th century, their words flowing in winding lines, curving with the images as though they too were part of the picture. At first glance, they seem like poems, gentle in rhythm, almost like songs. But when read closely, they reveal themselves as riddles, veiled in metaphor, concealing more than they reveal. One verse might speak of a king and queen, meeting in union, producing a child of shining light. Another might whisper of a serpent devouring itself, or of a bird rising from ashes, or of rivers flowing backward to their source. These are not tales for the casual eye. They are codes, allegories meant for the seeker who has already begun the path. Each word hides a meaning, each line a hint, yet never so clear that the uninitiated could grasp it. George Ripley himself, the English alchemist whose name these scrolls carry, was known for writing in such riddling verse. He believed that the secrets of alchemy were too powerful, too sacred, to be spoken plainly. To protect them, he cloaked them in poetry, in language that could only be unlocked by one who had already endured the trials of the work. And so the scrolls, carrying his influence, sing in the same secretive tone. Before you, a scroll unfurls in silence, your eyes following a verse that winds across the vellum like a ribbon. The words curve upward, then downward, crossing paths with dragons and vessels, suns and moons. You read them softly under your breath, and the lines seemed to shimmer, as though their meanings were just out of reach, waiting to be caught. Each word feels weighted, each rhyme like a key turned halfway in a hidden lock. For centuries, readers have puzzled over these verses, trying to lift the veil of metaphor. Some say the riddles describe chemical processes, encoded in allegory. Others claim they are spiritual lessons, teaching the seeker how to refine the soul through patience, humility, and inner fire. Perhaps they are both at once, twin meanings hidden in the same lines. The beauty of the scrolls is that they never settle into one explanation. They remain open, like dreams written upon parchment. To some, they are guides to furnaces and flasks. To others, they are prayers dressed in rhyme. To all, they are mysteries that resist being pinned down. And so the verses endure, curving through the centuries, speaking softly in words that sound familiar yet remain strange. Alchemical riddles, painted into scrolls, whispered in rhyme, their meanings forever shifting like firelight on glass. The Alchemist's Pilgrimage. As the Ripley Scrolls unfurl, one begins to see that they do not only describe a process of fire and glass, but also a journey. The seeker who appears upon their painted surface is not standing still. He is walking, climbing, moving through stages as though traveling a great road. The scroll itself becomes a map, a pilgrimage unrolling not across land, but across symbols, elements, and interchange. At the beginning of the scroll, the figures are humble. They appear as ordinary men, robed in plain garments, their faces downcast, their hands holding simple tools. But as the scroll stretches onward, the figures change. They climb ladders, they pass through flames, they stand beside kings and queens, they are crowned by celestial lights. The pilgrimage is not only outward, but inward, carrying the seeker from ignorance toward illumination. Some scrolls even show pilgrims in the literal sense, small figures walking along winding paths, their staffs in hand, their bodies bent in the long march. These travelers remind the viewer that the work of alchemy was not meant to be swift. It was a slow road, requiring patience, devotion, and faith in a promise that might never fully be seen. The scrolls themselves, with their endless length, mirror this truth. One must walk them slowly, unrolling step by step, as though taking a journey through time itself. Envision yourself standing before one of these scrolls, your hands gently unrolling the parchment further and further. You see the little pilgrim painted upon the vellum, and in his face you sense your own reflection. His path becomes your path. With every image, with every verse, you too are drawn deeper into the pilgrimage. It is not a road of earth, but of fire, symbol, and dream, yet it feels no less real. The Ripley Scrolls were created in monasteries and courts, places where pilgrims of spirit gathered in their own way. And just as the earthly pilgrim walked to distant shrines, the alchemist's pilgrimage was toward an unseen goal, the stone, the light, the final union of all things. Whether he ever reached it mattered less than the journey itself. For in walking the road, in enduring its trials, in holding fast to its mysteries, the seeker was already transformed. The scroll, then, is both map and road. It guides, but it also is the path itself. A pilgrimage painted in ink, waiting to be traveled not by foot, but by eye and by spirit. And even now, centuries later, the journey continues for anyone who dares to follow its length. A pilgrimage without distance, without end, winding forever along the parchment, carrying the seeker onward through the dream of alchemy. A dream that endures. The scroll comes to no clear ending. It does not close with a final verse or seal its images with certainty. Instead, it simply winds onward until the parchment runs out, leaving the seeker in mid-journey. In this way, the Ripley Scrolls mirror the nature of alchemy itself, a work that is never truly finished, a dream that continues beyond the reach of any single hand. Through their painted rivers, one sees dragons that cannot die, vessels that continue to burn, ladders that stretch upward without end. Suns and moons shine on, verses whisper in riddles, pilgrims walk their endless paths. All of it carries the same quiet message, that transformation is eternal. The work does not end in gold or silver alone, but in the endless striving toward light. 4 centuries, these scrolls have passed from hand to hand, from monastery to library, from court to collection. Each scribe who copied them added slight changes, shifting a verse here, a figure there, as though the dream itself were alive, reshaping with every telling. And so the Ripley Scrolls exist not as one fixed artifact, but as many. A family of visions, each carrying the same current, each flowing toward the same hidden promise. As you stand before one now, in a hushed gallery, the parchment unrolled across a long table, its colors still bright despite the centuries. You lean closer, tracing the painted lines, following the verses, losing yourself in the flow of images. Time seems to soften, the present slipping away, until you feel as though you are part of the scroll itself, walking among its dragons, standing beside its vessels, climbing its ladders toward the painted heavens. It is then you understand why these scrolls endure. They are not simply manuals, nor simply works of art. They are dreams committed to vellum, visions that reach beyond their makers, beyond their century. To gaze upon them is to step into a dream that began long ago, a dream of change, of union, of fire, of light. A dream that still whispers, still breathes, still invites. And so the Ripley Scrolls rest in their silence, yet they are never silent. They unroll again each time a pair of hands dares to touch them, each time a seeker dares to follow their path. Their rivers of ink continue to flow, their riddles continue to speak. The dream endures, waiting for the next pilgrim to walk its length. A dream without conclusion, unrolling forever. The alchemist's vision, the seeker's road, the scroll's eternal promise. Still alive, still waiting, still unfolding in the hush of time. The Book of Soyga, the Angel's Cipher, an enigma of prayers and codes, half within reach, half beyond, resting in the hands of heaven's messengers. A manuscript reappears. It is said that some books are meant to vanish as easily as they appear, and the Book of Soyga is one of them. For centuries, it existed in shadows, known only to a few scholars and whispered among collectors. Then, in the quiet of the 20th century, it reappeared, resurfacing as though it had been waiting, silent and patient, for its next reader. Step into a dimly lit library, the scent of old paper thick in the air. Shelves lined with manuscripts, each one holding its own secrets, but among them lies this singular volume. Bound in plain leather, worn with centuries of handling, its cover offers nothing to betray the marvels within. Yet, to open it is to step into a world unlike any other. A world of letters that refuse to speak plainly, of numbers arranged in grids that seem alive, of prayers and diagrams that hover at the edge of understanding. The manuscript is Renaissance in origin, crafted in the late 15th century, a time when scholars sought to reconcile the mysteries of heaven and earth. John Dee, the English mathematician and occultist, once possessed it, consulting its tables with meticulous care. He recorded its contents, attempted translations, and yet confessed that much of it remained incomprehensible. It was as though the angels themselves had spoken into the pages, leaving only fragments that humans might glimpse, but never fully understand. The Book of Soyga is divided into sections, each holding a distinct layer of secrecy. Some parts are familiar: prayers written in Latin, tables of letters carefully arranged, instructions that hint at ritual or meditation. Other parts resist interpretation entirely: squares of letters that defy linguistic patterns, sequences that suggest a cipher beyond earthly knowledge. Scholars have tried to decode them, to find a key, to follow the hidden logic. But the more they search, the more elusive the meaning becomes. It is a manuscript that demands both humility and wonder. One cannot rush through it, cannot expect certainty. To turn each page is to feel the weight of centuries pressing down, to sense the patience of those who crafted it and the silent guidance of those who guard its meaning still. The letters and tables do not speak to the unprepared. They speak only to those willing to linger, to trace each line with care, to feel the rhythm of its hidden logic. And yet, for all its mystery, there is beauty. The symmetry of the tables, the spacing of the letters, the flow of prayers alongside diagrams. Even in its unreadable parts, there is a harmony, a subtle rhythm that suggests intelligence, artistry, and devotion. It is a book that is both puzzle and poem, code and chant, earthly artifact and whisper from the heavens. To hold the Book of Soyga is to sense that the universe itself leans closer. The air feels stiller, the shadows longer, the silence filled with possibility. Each glance at the letters and tables awakens a quiet yearning, a sense that something profound is just beyond reach. And in that yearning, the manuscript fulfills its purpose, not to be solved, but to awaken wonder. Tables of hidden light. One of the most enigmatic features of the Book of Soyga is its tables. Grids of letters meticulously arranged across the page, each square seeming purposeful, yet the pattern invisible to ordinary sight. At first glance, they resemble puzzles or cryptograms, but linger a moment, and one senses a strange rhythm, a subtle pulse, as though the letters themselves hum softly with concealed knowledge. John Dee, the scholar and magus who owned the manuscript, devoted months to these tables. He believed they contained a language of angels, a system by which divine intelligence could be glimpsed through earthly symbols. He copied the tables with painstaking precision, aligning each row and column, comparing them to numerological patterns, and meditating on them in candlelit rooms. Yet even he confessed that the secret remained just beyond the reach of comprehension. The tables are not uniform. Some are small, simple squares, while others stretch across entire pages. Letters cluster and disperse, forming shapes that seem accidental, yet somehow purposeful. Some scholars have suggested that they encode words, prayers, or names of angels. Others believe the patterns reflect celestial harmonies, invisible melodies made manifest in ink. Whatever their origin, they hold a power that is subtle but undeniable. Picture yourself in a quiet study, the manuscript open before you. Candlelight flickers across the page, casting shadows that move with the letters. You follow a line of text, your finger tracing the sequence, feeling as though the ink itself vibrates with meaning. Each row and column seems to shift if you look too long, as if the knowledge contained within is alive, revealing itself only in moments of perfect stillness. It is said that those who gaze upon the tables for too long without guidance may feel disoriented. The mind strains to find patterns that may not exist in human terms. Yet for those willing to linger patiently, to meditate upon each square and let intuition guide their understanding, glimpses of hidden logic sometimes appear. Fragments of insight, like shards of light piercing a dense fog. Beyond their coded complexity, the tables are also beautiful, symmetrical, balanced, and deliberate. Their arrangement possesses a quiet aesthetic harmony. Each letter seems placed not only for meaning but for resonance, the spaces between squares echoing the breath of the universe itself. It is a rhythm that invites reflection, patience, and reverence. The tables of the Book of Soyga are, in this way, more than mere cipher. They are portals, thresholds, invitations to approach knowledge that exists on the border between the human and the divine. To look upon them is to feel the presence of something beyond the world, something patient, eternal, and luminous. The letters wait silently, humming with potential, offering only hints of the wisdom they contain. John Dee and the Angelic Key. In the quiet halls of the 16th century, John Dee labored with a devotion that few could imagine. Mathematician, astronomer, and seeker of hidden knowledge, he encountered the Book of Soyga and understood immediately that it was unlike any text he had ever seen. Its tables and verses whispered secrets, and he believed that they were a cipher, a language left for humans only partially to comprehend. A language that angels might fully understand. Dee approached the manuscript as one might approach a living being. Each day, he opened it with care, spreading its pages before him by candlelight. He traced the grids of letters with a practiced finger, comparing them to astronomical charts, numerical sequences, and mystical texts. And yet, for all his learning, the meaning remained tantalizingly out of reach. It was as if the letters themselves were aware of his gaze, permitting him glimpses but never surrendering fully. To bridge this gap, Dee turned to his partner, Edward Kelly, a medium and scryer. Together, they conducted what Dee called angelic conversations. Using crystal balls and reflective surfaces, Kelly claimed to summon celestial beings, who spoke through him in visions and whispers. The Book of Soyga was central to these consultations. Dee hoped that the angels would reveal its secrets, explaining the meaning of tables that had defied human logic for generations. According to Dee's journals, the angels spoke of names and numbers, of hierarchies of celestial beings, and of the precise ways that letters could convey divine will. The manuscript, they said, contained keys, formulas, arrangements, and hidden sequences that connected the human mind to heavenly order. Yet even with angelic guidance, not all was revealed. Many passages remained obscure, their meaning locked in a realm beyond mortal comprehension. Picture D at his desk, the crystal orb glowing faintly, the manuscript open before him. Candlelight flickers across the vellum, shadows dancing over the grids of letters. Kelly whispers softly, voice trembling, relaying the angel's instructions. D writes rapidly in his journals, attempting to capture every nuance, every hint. And yet, despite all this effort, a quiet tension remains. The sense that some knowledge can only exist beyond the human grasp, that some pages of the book belong solely to heaven. The Book of Soyga is, in this sense, a bridge between worlds. Human reason reaches toward it, but cannot cross unassisted. Dee's work exemplifies this tension, intellect guided by devotion, science intertwined with mysticism, scholarship illuminated by glimpses of the divine. His journals are proof of the manuscript's magnetism, its ability to draw the mind into contemplation, into patience, into wonder. Even centuries later, the echoes of Dee's labor remain. Scholars still pore over the tables, attempting to understand the angelic patterns. Yet the manuscript resists full interpretation, as though guarding its ultimate truths. And perhaps in its silence, it fulfills its highest purpose, to remind humanity that some mysteries are sacred, some knowledge is eternal, and some ciphers belong only to angels. Letters beyond comprehension. The most haunting feature of the Book of Soyga is not its pages of prayers, nor the tables of numbers, but the letters that seem to defy all earthly understanding. Arranged in grids, sequences, and patterns, they appear at first as language, yet closer inspection reveals no consistent syntax. No known alphabet, no recognizable words. Only a silent code that teases the mind, hinting at meaning while remaining inaccessible. Some scholars have suggested that these letters are a form of cipher, a key to hidden knowledge. Others believe they are a divine language, intended to communicate only with angels, or with those rare humans who have crossed the threshold of insight. Each letter hums with possibility, a symbol suspended between comprehension and mystery. Unfold the manuscript in a quiet chamber. Candlelight falls on the grids, revealing letters perfectly aligned, yet impossible to read. The eye tries to form patterns, the mind seeks logic, but each attempt slips like water through fingers. Some letters seem mirrored, others inverted, some repeated in ways that suggest rhythm but no meaning. A reader may linger for hours, tracing sequences with a finger, feeling a subtle vibration in the air, a sense that the page itself is alive. Dee recorded his fascination with these letters, noting patterns he could not explain. He compared them to celestial tables, astrological charts, and mystical writings, hoping to find a key. Yet he admitted that even with angelic intervention, the letters resisted translation. They existed partly to puzzle, partly to teach patience, partly to remind the seeker that not all knowledge can be grasped. The manuscript's letters invite a unique kind of meditation. One does not read them as one reads a story. One absorbs them, feels their placement, allows the mind to follow the flow without expectation of immediate clarity. To linger in their presence is to inhabit a space between worlds, where human logic meets divine possibility, and understanding is not demanded but hinted at. Even centuries later, this quality endures. Scholars armed with computers, cryptographers, and linguists have attempted to decode the letters, yet each discovery opens new questions rather than answers. They seem to be designed this way, a labyrinth of symbols without a final exit, a coded reflection of the unseen, a language that points beyond itself. The beauty of these letters lies in their very incomprehensibility. They are deliberate, measured, balanced. They invite awe and reverence. The eye traces them across the page, the mind contemplates their arrangement, and the spirit senses a resonance that defies words. They are a reminder that some knowledge is not meant to be possessed, only encountered, only contemplated, only respected. Arrays that whisper. The letter arrays of the Book of Soyga are not merely static grids, they seem to breathe. Each square, each carefully placed character, carries a rhythm, a subtle vibration, as if the manuscript itself is alive with hidden sound. Scholars have often described it as a whispering, though no voice is present. Only the quiet suggestion that knowledge moves beneath the surface, waiting to be perceived by a patient observer. The most intricate of these arrays stretch across entire pages, sequences of letters arranged in ways that defy ordinary comprehension. Dee studied them meticulously, recording every line, every column, every subtle variation, hoping to uncover the hidden logic. He believed these sequences were keys to the angelic language, channels through which celestial intelligence might touch the human mind. Picture yourself seated before one of these arrays in a candlelit study. The flickering light illuminates letters that seem at once familiar and alien. As your eyes trace the sequence, a rhythm begins to emerge. Perhaps it is in the spacing, the repetitions, the subtle inversions. Perhaps it is in the silence between the characters, the small spaces that hold the secret. Every glance encourages another, every pause invites deeper reflection. Some sequences shift subtly from page to page. Letters invert, repeat, or shift slightly. Small annotations edge the margins. To a casual observer, this may appear arbitrary. Yet to the attentive seeker, these variations hint at a hidden logic, a divine cipher, a rhythm meant to guide the mind, not merely to be decoded. Even now, scholars can decipher only fragments, leaving most arrays as mysterious and alive as they were centuries ago. The whisper of the arrays is not purely intellectual, it is almost spiritual. There is a cadence, a pulse, an invitation to study slowly, to linger with patience and reverence. Dee recorded that prolonged contemplation of the arrays could induce a state of heightened perception, a subtle attunement to forces beyond ordinary understanding. In this sense, the sequences themselves are teachers, guiding those who gaze upon them into reflection, patience, and quiet wonder. For modern readers, the arrays continue to whisper. They beckon, suggest patterns, tease meaning, yet remain partly opaque. They are riddles and guides, puzzles and prayers, codes and chants. The manuscript breathes softly through the centuries, communicating not in words alone, but in presence, urging the observer toward contemplation, toward awe, toward the edge of comprehension. The angels in the margins. As one delves deeper into the Book of Soyga, a subtle presence becomes apparent. Angels inhabit its margins, not drawn in detail, not towering figures, but delicate marks and symbols, barely perceptible, as if they hover at the edges of the human eye. Their forms are suggested rather than defined, a slight flourish of a letter, a curving line, a subtle annotation. Yet even these traces feel alive, infused with quiet intelligence. John Dee noted these marginal signs in his meticulous journals. To him, they were more than decoration. They were indicators, guides left by celestial intelligence. Each mark seemed to correspond to a letter, a sequence, or a passage within the manuscript, as though the angels themselves were whispering, "This is the point to watch, the line to meditate upon, the place where understanding may bloom." Hold the manuscript in candlelight. The pages worn by centuries, edges softened by time, yet at the borders, almost imperceptible, the angel's traces emerge. A faint curve here, a tiny flourish there, and the mind begins to sense a pattern. Not words as humans understand them, but signals, signs, keys to meanings just beyond the reach of ordinary comprehension. The margin becomes a sacred space, a thin veil between the reader and the unseen. The angelic presences are subtle teachers. They do not reveal the entire secret, they merely guide, pointing the seeker toward attentive study, patient reflection, and the humility required to approach knowledge beyond human grasp. Dee attempted to record these influences during his meditations, sketching them alongside the arrays of letters, noting where the spirit seemed to nudge him toward insight. Yet even with such care, the ultimate meaning remained elusive. The margins themselves, then, become a world. Not a world of printed letters, but a world of presence, of suggestion, of silent guidance. To trace the angel's marks with one's finger is to enter into dialogue with the manuscript itself. The act of looking becomes a form of meditation, a slow pilgrimage of observation, attention, and reverence. Even for modern readers, these marginal traces are potent. They evoke the sense that the manuscript is not dead, not inert, but alive. That it carries a consciousness beyond the human, whispering softly through centuries, through ink and parchment, waiting for eyes patient enough to notice. The angels in the margins are guardians, teachers, and companions, silent, delicate, eternal. Through their quiet presence, the Book of Soyga reminds us that knowledge is not merely contained in letters or numbers. It is breathed through attention, felt in presence, and revealed in the patient communion between seeker and manuscript. A reminder that some mysteries are held at the edges, in the spaces between, where angels dwell. Secrets bound in silence. The Book of Soyga carries within it a quiet weight, a knowledge bound in silence. Much of its content resists interpretation, hiding its deepest truths from human eyes. Letters, arrays, marginal signs, and mystical verses suggest meaning, yet their full purpose remains just beyond reach. It is a manuscript that teaches patience, that insists upon humility, that reminds the reader that not all knowledge is meant to be grasped at once. Picture a scholar seated before the open pages. Candlelight glimmers across the vellum, casting gentle shadows over letters and sequences. Every glance draws attention to the spaces, the intervals, the subtle shifts in arrangement. The mind strains to form patterns, the heart hopes for revelation, yet a quiet voice, unspoken, almost felt, whispers that understanding is partial, that some truths are meant to remain veiled. John Dee and other seekers sensed this. They approached the work with reverence, recording what they could, meditating on what they could not. The silence of the manuscript was not emptiness. It was deliberate, instructive, sacred. It demanded a dialogue not of speech but of attention. Every page turned, every sequence studied, every marginal flourish considered became part of a careful negotiation between human curiosity and celestial wisdom. Some sections of the book appear entirely inscrutable, sequences that defy analysis, letters that seem randomly scattered, patterns that shift if looked at too long. Yet even in their opacity, they convey a sense of order. A silent rhythm emerges, hinting that what is hidden is not chaotic, but deliberate. The very act of contemplating these mysteries is part of the work itself, training the mind to dwell in ambiguity, to linger in uncertainty, to accept the limits of understanding while remaining open to insight. The silence also carries a beauty, a rhythm and balance that transcends ordinary reading. Lines and arrays are symmetrical, margins balanced, sequences carefully measured. In this, the manuscript becomes a meditation, a prayer written in ink. The quiet holds as much significance as the visible, the hidden as much as the decipherable. Even today, the Book of Soyga continues to guard its deepest secrets. Scholars can interpret fragments, but the full revelation remains a dream beyond reach, a cipher spoken only to those who dwell patiently with its silence. It is this careful restraint, this binding of secrets in quiet, that gives the manuscript its enduring power. To linger with the book is to feel its patience, its quiet authority, its invitation to humility and wonder. Secrets bound in silence are not lost, only waiting for the mind and spirit to open slowly, fully, reverently, to the possibility of what lies beyond. Glimmers of the Celestial Cipher. The Book of Soyga closes on no final solution. Its secrets are neither exhausted nor revealed. Even after centuries of study, after John Dee's devotions and countless scholarly efforts, the manuscript remains partially veiled, a dream that cannot be fully grasped by human reason. And yet, it continues to speak softly, in whispers that echo across time. The celestial cipher hums within its pages. Each letter, each sequence, each marginal flourish resonates with a rhythm that suggests intelligence, guidance, and watchfulness. Not a language to be read in ordinary terms, but a music to be felt, an understanding to be sensed. As if the angels who left the text intended not to instruct plainly, but to invite a subtle communion between the human mind and the divine. Unfold the manuscript on a quiet night. Candlelight flickers across the vellum, shadows stretching long along the margins. The letters, arrays, and sequences shimmer faintly in your vision, their patterns shifting like reflections in water. You feel the presence of something beyond the ordinary, a consciousness threading through the text, guiding your attention, inviting your reflection, coaxing the mind toward insight without ever giving the whole. Even the act of reading becomes a ritual. To study the manuscript is to enter a liminal space, suspended between comprehension and mystery, between earthly perception and celestial guidance. The angels, though unseen, are felt in the weight of the pages, in the careful placement of letters, in the silent resonance of sequences that echo in the mind like soft music. Each interaction with the book is a dialogue, a meditation, a step along a path that is as much internal as it is textual. For Dee, and for those who follow in his footsteps, the Book of Soyga was never a puzzle to be solved in full. Its purpose lies in the striving, the patience, the reverence. Each glimpse of pattern, each partial understanding, is a brush with the eternal, a whisper of the celestial order that underlies the apparent chaos of letters and sequences. The manuscript becomes both teacher and companion, a guide whose lessons are felt in subtle shifts of awareness rather than in concrete answers. And so the Book of Soyga endures. Its letters, arrays, and marginal angels continue to call across centuries. A dream woven in ink and parchment, a celestial cipher half revealed, half hidden. It asks the seeker to linger, to contemplate, to embrace uncertainty, and to feel, if only for a moment, the presence of the infinite. A manuscript that whispers beyond time, that binds the earthly and the heavenly in ink, that invites patience, humility, and wonder. Its cipher is eternal, its mystery unbroken, its invitation alive, waiting for each reader to hear the quiet murmur, the gentle pull, the celestial whisper that continues to unfold.